Alright, so in our previous video, we had 6 moles of potassium chloride, and we solved using stoichiometry that we would produce 9 moles of oxygen gas, right? However, the next part of this question is what is the percent yield if we create a certain amount of O2 gas that is not 9 moles, right? 9 moles is what we call the theoretical yield. This is the most we could possibly get if all of our potassium chlorate becomes oxygen gas, or all of our potassium chlorate reacts to produce oxygen gas. However, this isn't always the truth. In reality, we have certain things that can decrease our yield. Maybe not all of the potassium chlorate reacts. And in essence, we'll get our experimental yield. This is how much product we actually form. And so our percent yield is the amount we actually get divided by what we get in perfect conditions, which is the theoretical yield, times 100%. So this question here says, what is the percent yield if the students obtained 8.4 moles of O2 gas? And in this case, we would solve it by saying the percent yield equals our experimental yield, which is what we actually got, 8.4, divided by our theoretical yield, which is 9 moles, times 100%. And what this would equal is 8.4 divided by 9, which is 0.933, times 100%, we'll get 93.3%. A follow-up question that's often asked is, why is the percent yield not 100%? And what you would say is that maybe not all of the reactants reacted to form the product. Or maybe we measured the amount of potassium chlorate incorrectly and we actually added less reactant. There's a lot of human error that goes into lab science, and we have to be aware of this, and it'll definitely be a question on your exam. The second part of this question says how many moles of O2 were produced if the percent yield is 83%? And we use the exact same formula, right? So percent yield equals experimental yield over theoretical yield times 100%. And we know our percent yield is 83.3, and our experimental yield is what we're trying to find, and we know our theoretical yield is 9 moles, because remember, if we go up here, this is how much we would get in perfect conditions if all of the potassium chlorate reacts. And so, times 100%. And now we have to do a little bit of algebra. We divide the 100% over, and we'll get 0.833 equals experimental yield divided by 9. We multiply both sides by 9, and what we get is the experimental yield equals 0.833 times 9, which is 7.5 moles. Then you just add a therefore statement, and you're on your way. Another thing that could be asked is, if your percent yield is greater than 100%, that means you got more experimental yield than is theoretically possible, right? And that could be because maybe human error, you added too much reactant and you didn't know about it, or maybe there's other impurities that you're also measuring. And so those would be the two answers to that you would give if the question asks, why is your percent yield over 100%, or why do you have more experimental yield than theoretically possible? Okay, that's it. Subscribe, like, whatever.